not very many.
I call the honourable member to Uraroa Flavel. Tēnā koe, Mr. Flavel.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Kia ora tātou e te whare. Hui mai nei tēnei pō. Can I start, Mr. Speaker, by saying to the Honourable Rodney Hyde that his speech was pretty much right on the money with respect to the Māori Party concerns about this particular bill and all aspects of his kōrero. And so I don't wish to go back over it again because he's placed the issues fairly and squarely along with other speakers in front of the Parliament of this land. What I do want to do, though, is sort of add to the theme in a sense around the police and say that as a young fellow and growing up, I've always sort of been brought up to understand and believe that if you need a hand, you go to the police. If you need some guidance, head to the police, give them the respect they're due. And in fact, having been out on the road a couple of times with them, I do give them full respect for the mahi that they have to do. I've been out at night time and daytime on shifts where I don't envy their tasks at times. And so there are those in the field who are doing a great job in keeping the country going in a lawful way. And there's been a few times that I've doubted about the responsibility of policemen and women throughout the country. I'd have to say that one of them was a few years ago where a young boy by the name of Richard Felwasa, I believe, in Whakatane was held by the police, and there was a big court case, and it was found that unfortunately they got that a number of the members of the police dealt to that young man in a way that should never have happened. And the second time, to cut over a long period of time, is basically that one day that is well written into New Zealand history with respect to the arrival of the police in the Ruatoki Valley. Now, following that, I was fortunate with a colleague of mine, Mr. Hone Harawira, to go to the streets of Whakatane on a day when they organised a hikoi through Whakatane. And so I've heard from nannies with their tamariki who were still shaking after that moment in time. And we're talking a week or so after it. They were crying and showing their anger and despair at what happened. I've been with the people in Whakatane on that hikoi. I've heard a draft report back from the Human Rights Commission. I've been at the Tūhoi Ahure, which is the biggest festival of gathering of Tūhoi people in the Ruatoki Valley on at least 2 occasions, because it's run every 2 years. I've heard haka, I've heard poi, I've heard whai kōrero, or speech making on the marae, that concludes absolutely that Tūhoi will never ever forget that occasion. I know that Tūhoi, even their young people, as recently as about 2 months ago or a month ago, at their competitions, had that day in mind when they did their haka. I know that Tūhoi talk about the confiscation line. I know that Tūhoi talk about the invasion of Maunga Pōhatu. I remember and was there on the day that the Waitangi Tribunal arrived at the Ruatoki Valley on the back of a cart, where there was about 20 young men on horses, and at least at every point and stop all the way into the Ruatoki Valley, the tribunal were reminded about what Tūhoi believe is their history and what's happened to them through things such as confiscation and invasion. So there is a history, Mr. Speaker, of mistrust of the police by the Tūhoi people, not just on the back of one occasion, on the back of, and I suppose the state in a sense, on the back of a number of occasions over time. And what's worse is, I suppose, since that time is that those people still hang in limbo, not the ones who are in court necessarily or have been released or otherwise, but the people who actually had their doors either smashed over or knocked on, from those families who had their tamariki strip searched, from the families who had family members taken to other areas of the Bay of Plenty and outside. And I won't talk about the Auckland ones because I didn't hear anything from them. I heard from the Tūhoi people. And I haven't heard anyone say, I'm sorry. I haven't heard anybody say, we got it wrong. I haven't heard any, and I'm not talking about the substantive, I'm talking about those people who were hurt on that day. Those ones who got nothing, absolutely nothing to do with it, but they still suffer 4 years down the line, Mr. Speaker. That's who I feel sorry about. Those are the ones I think about. Those ones who lived in Whakatane said, well, look, the police came around and now people don't talk to us. It's down to that sort of detail that people still hurt about what happened there. And there are those still who are waiting to go to court, and sure, one or two have had some liberties of going overseas. Good on them. But the rest, sir, I just want to make a plea that tonight in this Parliament, that we think about those people. Now, you'd imagine against all that background of waiting for 4 years, what happened, you'd understand that people of Tūhoe, as I say, their feelings about the police aren't all that great. Finally, to find out that about a month or so ago that a number of them got off, 10 to 12 of them got off because the evidence didn't stack up or whatever, or it had some people laughing. And then to finally get the outcome of the Supreme Court ruling was really, in a sense, rub salt into the wound. Especially if you have a statement from the judge of the court, Chief Justice Shana Elias, where she makes a statement and she says this: Parliament has provided many statutory powers of entry, search and seizure, including for the interception of conversations. It has not, however, provided any authority for secret surveillance of the type undertaken here, despite having had the absence of such powers drawn to its attention, the point made by Mr Hyde, drawn to the attention of successive parliaments by the Court of Appeal and the Law Commission. That's what she said. She considers, she continues on, I consider that the police acted unlawfully if they do not have specific statutory authority for intruding upon personal freedom. The conclusion is compelled, in my view, by both the common law and by the terms of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. It also meets rules of law, values of certainty and predictability. So, sir, against all of that, you'd understand that not just Tūhoe indeed, but Māori is, across the country are looking sideways now at that whole relationship with respect to the police. And indeed, about how could it be that the police, of all people, could go ahead into an action that was unlawful, as Mr Hyde says. Now, this bill, sir, I think cuts to the very core of some deeply held concerns within our community. Mr Hyde outlined most of them, but if I could say that we're talking about transparency, we're talking about accountability, we're definitely talking about trust, and ultimately, maybe even the notion of corruption. So, what really worried me was in an interview from the Police Association, where the head of that association said something along the lines of, well, it wasn't written down that we couldn't do it, so we did it. I mean, we're talking the head of the Police Association, and if that's the rationale for going ahead with actions by the police, we got some serious problems. We got some serious problems. And so I agree absolutely with Mr Hyde on all the points about retrospectivity, looking back, about the whole notion of the short time frames. We would have liked to have a little bit more time to work out, because clearly it's been identified there's an issue there. But, sir, under the circumstances, clearly it isn't going to happen. But I can say, and it wouldn't be too much news to anybody, that the Māori Party will be voting against this legislation. We're going too fast. We've got to take our time to get it right. And in the end, I understood in discussions with various people that anyway, if there's a worry about those people who are still out there, then what happens with them? Well, as I understood it, and I tried to get some clarity around it, police simply need to go to court to get permission to be able to go about the work that still lies there. And the Minister, I think, in this afternoon's question time outlined the difference between the two terms, which were unlawfulness and unreasonableness. Thank you. I'm not a lawyer, but I'd kind of like to think that authorities should still stay within the court. And finally, sir, The question of will people get off? There are 4 people still being held under charges at this point in time, so that might suggest that those people can still be held over, and indeed those other people charged with crimes, it's not going to go away. We will fight this legislation all the way through. Kia ora mai.
I call the Honourable Minister Judith Collins.